Overnight, fire officials in the state said is the largest fire in California this year. I've been speaking with Michael Mann. He's the Presidential Distinguished Professor of Earth and Environmental Sciences and the Director of the Penn Center for Science, Sustainability and the Media. He's also the author of the forthcoming book, Science Under Siege. Michael, we're seeing wildfires across Europe at the moment and also here in North America, in the US and in Canada. There are some people that say this is just a one-off extreme weather pattern or weather event. What would you say to them?
What I would say, this is part of a larger emerging pattern. Summer after summer, we're seeing hotter conditions. We're seeing more extensive drought, summer drought over large parts of North America and Europe. And it's not rocket science. You make it hot, you make it dry, you get these sorts of wildfires. In fact, there's a variable that we use. It's called the vapor pressure deficit. It's a measure of how dry the air is, and that determines how dry vegetation and fuel is that feeds these wildfires. And so as temperatures warm up, we're seeing increases in this vapor pressure deficit, and we're seeing more extensive, hotter burning, faster spreading, more extensive, more deadly wildfires across the Northern Hemisphere, including here in North America and Canada. We're seeing wildfires burn in Canada right now. There is an unprecedented wildfire on the north rim of the Grand Canyon right now. And France is seeing one of the worst wildfires it's seen in decades. And it's not a coincidence. This interconnected pattern is part of what we expect to see more of as we warm up the planet.
So this is climate change, Michael?
In short, it is. Sure, there are going to be wildfires in the summer, but the fact that we're seeing more extensive wildfires, we're seeing more deadly and damaging wildfires, and this is a pervasive pattern that correlates with the warming of the planet, that's not a coincidence.
Poor forest management is often blamed as well, but that's just a small part of the picture, isn't it?
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of excuses that climate deniers and those who those who are opposed to dealing with the climate crisis, they'll come up with claims that it's land management, that it's forest clearing practices or backburning. There are a whole bunch of claims that they'll make to try to explain this away, but scientists can actually look at the pattern of wildfire, and they can look at the underlying variables that determine how extensive these wildfires are. And scientists who have looked at the data have concluded that the overwhelming majority of the increase in the severity and extent of these wildfires that we're seeing is due to human-caused warming from fossil fuel burning and the production of carbon pollution.
Michael, you hear people saying this is the new normal, this is what we have to live with, which is quite terrifying. But if temperatures actually keep rising, what will the wildfire season look like in 10 or 20 years?
Yeah, that's right. New normal sort of understates the threat that we're dealing with, because it makes it sound like we've arrived at some new sort of situation and we just have to figure out how to adapt to it. But that's not the case. Temperatures will continue to increase. Summer temperatures will continue to get hotter in North America and Europe as we continue to warm up the planet. We will get more extensive droughts, and those factors will come together to give us even more pervasive, even more extensive, even more damaging and deadly wildfires. This all gets worse as we continue to warm up the planet. Now, there are things that we can do to try to adapt to the changes that have happened so far. But if we continue to burn fossil fuels and warm up the planet, we will exceed our collective adaptive capacity, our ability to deal with these disasters.
Is it all doom and gloom, Michael, or is progress actually being made at the moment in reducing emissions? Where are we at?
Yeah, there's a little bit of good news. Now, here in the United States, unfortunately, we have a government that is sort of opposed to U.S. engagement in global climate policy and is taking steps to sort of impede our domestic efforts to address the climate crisis. But worldwide, we are seeing a move away from fossil fuels towards clean energy. We are seeing carbon emissions now start to peak. That's good news, but they've got to come down, and they've got to come down pretty quickly if we are going to avert a truly catastrophic 1.5 Celsius, 3 degree Fahrenheit warming of the planet, where this will all get even worse. So there's progress being made, but we're not making enough progress yet to avoid catastrophic consequences.
We've got to this point at the end of the interview, and maybe in a way that is the point, Michael, because I've just read an article that you've written about how climate scientists and journalists haven't done enough talking or communicating about how we can avert that crisis. What would be your key message around that? Yeah,
it would be urgency and agency. There is urgency in addressing this crisis. There's no question about that. We're seeing that play out right now in real time. But we have agency. There are actions that we can take to move away from fossil fuels, to move towards clean energy, to bring carbon emissions down and prevent this from all getting worse. And there's a little bit of good news in the science. The science today tells us that the warming of the planet will stop when we bring those carbon emissions to zero. We didn't used to think that that was true. We thought that we would lock in some additional warming for decades, but we now know if we can bring carbon emissions down to zero, we can stop the continued warming of the planet that is making all of this worse. Michael Mann there, coming up.